guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and last year we released a free pattern, and today I wanted to do a video featuring the Faux Feathered Star. I'm going to simplify the traditional star and you're going to love it. The traditional feathered star is very intricate and beautiful, but it requires templates, Y seams, odd angles, and that's not what I'm about. So today, what I'm going to show you is the faux feathered star, and we're going to use template paper for the triangles and for the flying geese. And what that's going to give you is really sharpness and no waviness, and it's going to simplify the pattern for you by using the papers. First, you're going to download the Faux Feathered Star pattern at Fat Quarter Shop, and then you're going to get your fabrics. So for our 2 star points, we have 1 1/8 yards of each. For our background, we have 1 7/8 yard. This pattern is written to use both the half square triangle paper and the flying geese paper, but of course, you can convert it to the traditional method if you want with this free pattern. So let's get started with our fabric, our pattern, and our foundation paper. We're going to start with page 3 of our pattern, and we're going to start with the side star point. We're going to be making 4. So what you'll do is take a fabric M rectangle and 2 fabric H squares. What you're going to do is put a fabric H square on the top of that rectangle, and you're going to sew on the line, trim 1/4 inch away, and press. And my tips here are, I would either pin this in place so there's no shifting, and how I would pin is just like this, stitch on that line and then remove the pins, or you could use seam-align glue. That is going to keep your pieces nice and straight and make sure you're on that correct edge. So you're gonna stitch that, trim 1/4 inch away, and that's what that looks like. Then on the bottom, you're gonna add your next fabric H square, and you're gonna be going the same direction. You're going to stitch on that line, trim 1/4 inch away, and this is your side star point. And what I want you to notice is we have a really nice straight line here. You know, some patterns you can kind of fudge and not exactly sew correctly, but this pattern, there's really no room to fudge. That's why I suggest pinning or using glue on these corner squares. The second step in the pattern is to use triangle paper, and this right now what we're building is that outside corner, and triangle paper is going to really help you with this section. So you're going to cut your rectangles for your B and J. You're going to put those right sides together, and I am going to keep the salvages together just so that I don't have to worry about sewing right here, and if there's a salvage on each end, then I kind of have to make sure I center it. If you keep the salvages together, it keeps it a lot easier. Now from your H200, which is your 2-inch finished half square triangle paper, you're going to cut a section that's 2 by 6, which gives you 12 squares. And that is what this looks like right here. And what you want to make sure is your fabrics are right sides together, that you have plenty of room on each side, and that the salvage is not within your seam. From here, what I would do is pin lots of times anytime you're away from a dotted or solid line. Then you will stitch directly on the dotted lines. Now, it's really important to stay right on those dotted lines. Like I said, this pattern is not forgiving, so you have to be as accurate as possible. When you do that, it's going to look like this. I would also recommend using a size 90 needle, and I would use a really short stitch length. So whatever you normally stitch, go down about 0.5. And so you'll see I have tiny, tiny stitches. And then what you want to do is cut the solid line. So I'm going to show you how to cut that. But the accuracy in this product is in your sewing lines and your cut lines. So the easiest thing to do is cut the outside lines first. And you just want to cut exactly on that line. If you cut too far one way, you'll be too big. If you cut too far the other way, you'll be too small. And I use the same rotary cutter when I'm working with paper as I do when I'm cutting. I don't use a different rotary cutter. Now from here, you could cut this line and then cut these. That's a good idea, but sometimes I make mistakes. So what is easier to do is cut this in half and then subcut, because you're going to get more accurate results. And what I'll do is I'll cut this one kind of at an angle, lift my ruler where I don't move my paper, and cut. And you see I'm cutting right on those lines. From there, you will cut on the diagonal lines. The diagonal lines, you don't have to be perfect though, because that's your seam allowance and you won't see it. So you get 12 from this, but you're gonna do the same thing here and you're gonna have a total of 24 half square triangles, and it's gonna be so easy and they're gonna come out so accurate. So now you're going to pull the paper off, you're gonna press to one side, and then from there press open. And when you do that, it's going to look nice and flat on the back and on the front. And then we're going to be on step 3. You're gonna take your side star point unit and 3 of the half square triangles. And the most important thing here is to make sure your blue and your white are in the correct space. So you've got to just double check against this diagram. You're gonna pin and sew a 1/4 inch seam on all of these. When you do that, your unit will look like this, and then like I said on the other, you're gonna press to one side and then press open. And you can see how many points we are getting right there. You're gonna make 4 of these, and this is called your side unit. Now we're moving to the top right of page 3, and we're gonna be doing something similar to step 1, but different directions. You're gonna take your fabric M, and this time lay it horizontally. You're gonna take a fabric H square, draw a line corner to corner, place it on the left end. And again, this is where it's so important to either glue or pin. Stitch on the line, press towards the white, and that will look like this. Then you're gonna take your remaining square, put it on the right end, checking the direction of your drawn line, stitch directly on that line, and press towards the background. You're gonna make 4 of these, and this is your bottom star point. So now we're gonna make our bottom unit. You're gonna take the unit we just made, and then you're going to pull 3 half square triangles from the step that was 2 steps ago, and this time we're gonna add a fabric N square. And again, you're just gonna double check you have all your fabric in the right spot. This time you're gonna sew with a 1/4 inch seam. You're gonna press this seam open, and you can press these to the right, or if you prefer, you can press open. It's totally up to you. You're gonna make 4 of these bottom units. So our first step in the pattern, we made a side unit. Our 4th step in the pattern, we made a bottom unit. And so you just have to make sure all of your triangles are going the right way. You're gonna take a fabric A square and place that right here. And what you'll do is pin all along this intersection, and then you'll press towards the background, you'll add the bottom, and then you'll press towards the top. Now, I will give you a tip and say that if I was making this pattern, I would press everything open, just because it's gonna make everything lay flatter. You're gonna make 4 of these, and these are gonna be your corner block units, and this will probably be the easiest step of the entire quilt. And when that's sewn, this is how it looks, and I would just say double, triple check all of your backgrounds and your navies before you move on. Now we're on page 4 of our pattern, and I'm going to introduce you to Flying Geese paper by It's So Emma. Today we're using the 2 inch by 4 inch finished size, and each pad will make 84 blocks, and I'm going to show you how you use the paper. The first thing you do is you pull one page out. I'm going to show you one page, and you would cut according to the inside cover, which we've already done with our fabric D, and we wrote our pattern that way. You're going to cut your fabric D and cut on the diagonal line. Then you're going to cut a fabric K. Now to use the paper, I like to use the add a quarter plus and put a crease between all of the numbers. And the numbers are the direction that you want your fabric to go. So now we need to place across this fabric 1. So I'm going to put some seam glue by sew line. I'm going to put the fabric right side up, and that's going to stay in place. Now you can see that this fabric has covered all of those seams. If you would have placed it a different way, it wouldn't have worked. Now from here with these folded lines, I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away, and having that glue is going to keep everything in place so it does not shift. And you can use this method with any of the Flying Geese paper. We also have a video on 5 ways to make Flying Geese, And you can also refer to that video to see if there are other methods you would rather do. This quilt we're doing this way because there are so many points. And once you're done sewing this advanced quilt, you will know why we have used it. So now this is how the front looks. And what we're gonna do is sew our fabric twos first. So I will put one fabric here and one fabric here. So that basically is right on that cut line, and I've got an equal distance on each side of these triangles. I'm gonna hold it in place, go to the sewing machine, and from there I'm gonna start sewing a 1/4 inch away from that drawn line, and I'm actually gonna go all the way across. On this number 2, I'm gonna go all the way across. And I'm going to move my stitch length back to that shorter stitch length that we used when we did the triangle paper. Now from here, I'm gonna use my quick press seam roller. You can use your iron, but this just seems easier. I'm gonna kind of pull these up just a little bit. And I wanted to show you on the back where I started sewing. I sewed way far out. That's just easier. I think I get better results. From here, you just clip these little edges right here. Now this part of the quilt I would not press open, like I said earlier, it's just the other parts. Now we're gonna add our fabric D's to the remaining sections, and we're gonna sew on that line 3, and again, I'm gonna start a 1/4 inch out and go a 1/4 inch past. I'm not going to use any seam because I don't want my paper to shrink. So this is how the front looks, and this is how the back looks. What we're going to be worrying about here is cutting on the solid lines. So we're going to cut all 4 of the outside solid lines. You're going to ignore those dotted lines. So just like the triangle paper, you're going to want to make sure to cut accurately for the best results. And you can see all of this sewing that I did on the extra. That just gives it a nice clean edge with no loose threads, because all my loose threads are on the outside. So now we have 2 flying geese. What we want to do is cut these 2 solid lines. So I'll cut one. This one's easier to turn and then cut. You'll discard this piece. And then from here, you're going to remove your paper. And it's just as easy to remove it just like this. And from each of these, you're going to get 2. You're going to repeat this step until you have 24. And this is going to be your flying geese unit. And then now we're going to move to the hardest part of the quilt, and that's assembling the inside section. Now we're moving to step 3 on page 4. And like I said, this is the hardest part. So we're going to take our fabric G square, and cutting accurately is so important in this quilt. Take a fabric F rectangle, 2 flying geese with our points to the left, a fabric Q square, and a fabric P square. What you'll do is you'll sew these together using lots and lots of pins. Once you sew that together, you'll sew these together and add this. That is going to be your first partial left unit, and you're going to be making 4. From there, you're going to take a fabric E rectangle, another flying geese pointing to the left, and a fabric Q square. You're going to use pins, and you're going to press according to the pattern. From there, once that is sewn together, you're going to join that with this piece. And once that's all done, that is going to be your left unit. You're going to make 4 of these. Like I said, we have pressed open. Some of the pattern says to press to one side. It's totally up to you on what you do, but the most important thing here is to make sure your flying geese are flying the correct way. And again, you're going to make 4. Now that we have our left unit done, we're going to move and make a square and a square unit. So basically, you're going to take your fabric L, 2 fabric H squares. You're going to put those on opposing corners. And here, very important to pin, stitch on the line, then remove your pins, trim a 1/4 inch away. Once you do that, this is how your unit will look. Then you're going to add the remaining corners, stitch on the line, trim a 1/4 inch away, and this is your diamond unit. It's also known as a square and a square unit. This finishes at 4 inches and is unfinished at 4.5. Now, if you want to keep your quilt super accurate, you could use the 4-inch square and a square paper. We didn't include it on the pattern just because we didn't want you to have to add another pad of paper, but if you want your quilt super accurate, this is what you would use. And again, you're going to make 4 of these diamond units. So we've made our diamond units. We're gonna move to page 5. And on page 5, you're gonna take a fabric C rectangle, one of your diamond units. You're gonna sew that together with a 1/4-inch seam. Pinning is essential. And then you're going to press. You can press towards the C, or you can press open, and you will be making 4 of these. And this will be going in the center of the unit we're currently making. So we previously made our left unit. Now we're gonna do the opposite thing to make our right unit. So you're gonna take your fabric E rectangle, flying geese pointing to the right, and a fabric Q square. Then you're gonna take a fabric F and G, and I'm laying this out so you guys could screenshot this when you're sewing at home just to replicate. And so basically you've got 2 fabric Q squares, a fabric P square, E, F, and G, and your flying geese going this way. You're gonna follow the pattern, sew with a 1/4-inch seam. Once you have these 2 together, you're gonna sew those together, add this, and then add this. This is going to be your right unit. So here's your left unit, and here's your right unit. And one thing you can do to keep this kind of straight is keep your light blues at the bottom. Make sure your geese are flying out. You're gonna add that center unit, and again, pinning is so important. You're gonna sew with a 1/4-inch seam, and when you do that, this is your feathered star block unit. And this is what I said is going to be the hardest part of the quilt. You're gonna be making 4 of these. Once you get this done, since this is an advanced quilt, you might wanna take a break and come back tomorrow to finish the rest. Now we're moving to the center unit, and we're on page 6. You're gonna take fabric D triangles, this time a fabric O rectangle. You're gonna replicate those steps we did in the previous flying geese with our 2-inch by 4-inch flying geese paper. This time you will be making 16 flying geese. This is how your flying geese will look. They're exactly the same size, just different colors as your previous. Now we're on step 2. This time you're gonna take your flying geese and point them down, and you're gonna place 4 together. You're gonna sew 2 together and 2 together. Press open, then put these together and press that either open or down. And that is going to look just like this. And using that paper, you see all these really nice points. This is gonna measure 4.5 by 8.5, and you're gonna make 4 of these. So for your center, you're gonna take a fabric I square, and then you're gonna place these center units around that square, pointing your flying geese in. That's the most important part. And then you're gonna add fabric P squares to the corner, and now you kind of see how you've got the dark in the center, the medium in the middle, and then you see those darks that we started with originally go to the outside. Once you sew this together with 1/4-inch seams and lots of pins, this is your center unit, and you only have to make 1. And once this is done, now we can assemble our quilt. The hardest part is done, and let's move on. So let's look at the quilt assembled. This right here is your corner block. Right here, this is your feathered star block, and this right here is another corner block. So you've got 4 corner blocks, 4 feathered star blocks, and right here, this is your center block. So lots of seams, just make sure you've got everything going the right direction, and you can see how this really makes a beautiful flying area. And this is kind of how the blocks look before they go into the quilt. So there is your corner block, your feathered block, and your center block. And I would just say make sure you're pinning in every intersection. And we had this one quilted with a really nice swirl, kind of a tighter design, and we put the same background print on the front as we did on the back to give us a beautiful quilt. And we hope that this simplified version of the feathered star will really help you at least start your journey to eventually doing a feathered star. So guys, let me know if you're gonna try the faux feathered star, and if you do, comment and let me know how many hours it takes you. I know this one is super hard, but I know you can do it. Make sure you join me every Friday for my weekly live streams and subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and I'll see you next time.